Hello, and happy marvelous Monday, everybody. I am super excited that you are joining me today. I am live on Facebook, I'm live on LinkedIn, and I am live on YouTube. Welcome. Hey, y'all. Hey, I am Karissa Spann, the landlord and tenant expert. And today I'm excited and kind of sad, actually, to have to share this conversation with you. Before I get into the segment, again, thank you so much for joining me. This is what I do each and every Monday right here on this platform. I am live 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Let me know where you're tuning from. Let me know which platform you're viewing this conversation on. And if you're watching a replay, drop a replay in the comment section. For those of you who are tuned in on my YouTube channel, if you have questions on the YouTube channel, many of you know that I do follow up and I respond to questions when I am not on the air. So thank you again for tuning in today. We are going to get into a much needed conversation. I do want it to be a two-way conversation, communication. So by all means, if you have questions, if you have comments, remarks, or observations, please drop it in the comment section. I will definitely respond to it. I do want to put this disclaimer out there. I am not an attorney. Information that I share is not legal advice. However, I am definitely sharing the industry's best tips and practices. And if you have any concerns, like I said, drop it in the comment section. I want to make sure that if you have questions pertaining to this subject matter, I want to answer those questions. If you have feedback, share that with me so that I can share it with others who are tuned in today. Maybe others have questions that perhaps you may have a question about, right? Maybe you have a comment that someone who's watching the replay may not have an opportunity to comment on. So I definitely encourage you to share your feedback, share your thoughts, ask your questions on today. So at the bottom of the screen, you see my disclaimer. I am not an attorney. If you have legal questions, I will always recommend that you speak with a reputable landlord and tenant attorney. So the information that I'm sharing today, although this subject is specifically out of the Washington, D.C. area, it is not by all means isolated to D.C. This is a situation that is happening all around the country. And it's unfortunate that I do have to share this story because every week I'm live. It costs nothing but your time to show up and get this information. So if you find that anything that I share today is helpful, please like, please tag, or more importantly, share it with someone else who you believe it could impact in a positive way, because my goal, my hope is to help others avoid going through this situation. Now, I know that I said last year, and I've been saying it most of this year, we're in 2024, I've said and I've shared endless times that we are going to see more lawsuits filed against landlords by tenants. Well, it is happening. It is unfortunate that it's happening, but I believe that if we just learn, even if this does not apply to you today, maybe share it if you're a housing provider. Share it with a colleague of yours. Share it with someone who may be new in property management, maybe self-managing, or maybe if you are an investor, maybe you are a property owner and you have thousands of properties. I still believe that this information is impactful. This information is not just for landlords, but it's also for tenants. It's for the entire rental community. So I'm talking about the price of ignoring housing laws and how that does impact businesses' bottom line. And the laws don't really care if you're a large landlord with thousands of doors, or if you're a small landlord, mom or pop, maybe you're self-managing and you have one rental property. The laws are in place for a reason. So please, I beg you, please, ma'am, please, sir, just listen to the information I'm sharing today. I'm not asking you to do anything. I promise I'm not going to pull your leg. I'm not going to ask to draw blood. I just want people to get this information. All right. And again, please share it. Sharing is caring. So I'm going to get into the segment. I see your comments coming in. I'm going to acknowledge those of you who are here. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right. So again, the situation here is all about ignoring fair housing laws. But let me get into what this segment is about. So it's about a lawsuit that recently came out of the Washington, D.C. area. Okay. And it came about at a time that was really not, I don't think that any lawsuit is the right time, but in any event, let me just say that this lawsuit came about because this landlord or owners rather just completely violated fair housing laws. And so I'm going to unpack this story because in this rental world that we're in, fair housing rights, specifically those regarding the acceptance of the Housing Choice Voucher program. That means there's a participant, there's someone or family maybe who is participating in what is called the Housing Choice Voucher, formerly known as the Section 8 program. My focus here is clearly on fair housing rights and responsibilities. What does that mean for landlords? What does that mean for tenants? And the importance of understanding housing laws to foster equitable rental communities. And by the way, for those of you who have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Please go over to the YouTube channel. There you can find me, Landlord Lyfe. Life is spelled with a Y. Landlord Lyfe with Karissa Spann. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That way you'll be the first to know when I'm live, when I am online, and as I'm sharing weekly insights and discussions. All right, so let's get into this conversation today. So recently, the Equal Rights Center filed a lawsuit alleging that a major housing provider refused to accept housing vouchers. Now, this raises serious questions for both landlords as well as tenants about fair treatment, about legal rights, and equitable access to housing. I do know that in the District of Columbia and many jurisdictions throughout the United States, there's a big push to eliminate, to eradicate homelessness. And so the government and a lot of cities and jurisdictions throughout the United States, they are looking for landlords to partner with them and to provide rental homes for these participants to be able to live in with either for themselves and or with their families. And so whether you are a landlord looking to navigate the legal landscape, or maybe you're just a tenant wanting to understand your rights, I promise that this episode today will definitely provide those valuable insights. So I'm going to cover some tips for landlords. So if you're a landlord, please make sure that you stick around. And if you've been following me for some time, you already know I have tips for you as well as tenants to help you navigate this complex rental landscape. But I'm going to spotlight this case because this is a real case that actually happened in the District of Columbia where justice was served. And I do want you to know and understand that my mission is very simple. Is to guide you through the information that I'm sharing today in a way that's easy, clear, and digestible for you to understand. Okay. So now that I've gotten all of that in the way, let me start out by sharing that this lawsuit, it came by way of the Equal Rights Center. All right. The Equal Rights Center is a civil rights organization. It's focused on eliminating discrimination in housing, in employment, and public accommodation, especially in the greater Washington, D.C. area. So in this case, the defendant owned and managed several D.C. apartment rental properties. So the allegations are very clear. So the Equal Rights Center, they claim that the companies or the owners of these apartment complexes, they refuse to accept the Housing Choice Voucher program. And for those of you who don't know, that means that they had applicants who came to them. They were interested in renting apartments in those communities. And the leasing agent, the property manager, whoever, the representative for that property, the apartment complex, just flat out said, you know what, we don't accept the voucher. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. And I'm definitely going to break it down a little bit more. But for those of you who are not as familiar, those of you who are not as knowledgeable about the Housing Choice Voucher Program, that's what that means. So some people, they recognize the term Housing Choice Voucher. Some of you may know and understand the term Section 8. Either way, it is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, okay? And so this owner or representatives for these owners in multiple apartment communities throughout DC flat out told these tenants, or prospective tenants rather, that they do not accept the Housing Choice Voucher Program. They don't accept their vouchers. Now, this violates DC human rights and the DC Consumer Protection Procedures Act. So one of the things that I always say is this: as an owner, as a housing provider, as a housing professional, it is so important to know and understand what the laws are in your jurisdiction. And I know that some of you, I know I have colleagues who own thousands of properties. I know you're watching, you're tuned in. Share with your friends and your family, your colleagues, your buddies, new investors, that from one state to the next, the laws are different. The laws, they will vary. They are not the same. So for instance, what is applicable in Virginia is not applicable in DC. And just because you own the property does not give you the right to determine who will and will not live in your rental property unless you have some sort of legal exemptions by which you can do that. But in this case, that was clearly not the situation. So the ERC, they was alerted by a community organization in early 2023 about a related property agent refusing to tour a voucher eligible client. So the Equal Rights Center, they launched a civil rights testing investigation. Let me pause because I want you to understand. I want you to pick up what I'm putting down. So a civil rights tester, well, let's just say it's a tester, right? So these are people who are actually hired to go out and to test owners to see if they are in compliance with the law. Now, let me just tell you that a tester will not show up. A tester might look like me, posing to be a prospective tenant, right? To say, hey, I'm interested in your rental property. I'm in a Section 8 program, or I'm going to get a voucher and I'm interested in renting at your apartment complex. And they're also going to send someone else, because when they are testers, they're going to send out two. Now, it's not going to be at the same time. So tester 1 might show up today. Tester 2 might show up in the evening or the next day. They're going to have the same script. They're going to have the same needs. They're going to each ask for the same, let's say, style of apartment, right? They're going to have different scenarios, but very similar. The script is going to be the same. And this is how a lot of landlords are getting tripped up, because they don't know the law. Now, I shared a few segments ago, whereas I was in a management office, I was managing a property, and I had testers came out. And I just kind of chuckled. I laughed because I've been in property management for well over 20 plus years. Not only am I a licensed property manager, but I'm also a property management educator. So I teach individuals how to get into property management. I prepare individuals to take the property management test to get licenses. So obviously I teach fair housing and the laws, right? And so when I had the testers to come out, I just kind of laughed, and one of the individuals, they just kind of looked at me, and I did explain, like, I get you're doing your job. I'm a property management housing educator, so understand, what's going on right now. And I continued with the tour, because that's what they were there for, to tour the property, the facility. And I'm going to get into some tips about how to do that a little bit later. So essentially, that's what the ERC did. They sent out their testers to investigate the situation. And here is what they found. So the tester was told that vouchers would need to cover not only the rent, but also all utilities and a full month's security deposit. Well, let me just tell you that the voucher, number one, it does not have a dollar amount. Okay. If you have someone who comes to you with a housing choice voucher, the voucher will have the family or the head of household name. It's going to have the bedroom size. It's going to indicate the date that the voucher was issued. It's going to indicate the date that the voucher expires. The voucher does not have a dollar amount on it. So for those of you who have never had a Section 8 housing choice voucher, Section 8 participant come to you and wanting to rent, if you ask them, well, how much will the voucher cover? They can give you a range because it will depend on, and in real estate, we already know this. In real estate, it's all about location, 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 location. What does that mean? So let's say, for instance, you have a property in, let's say, Columbia Heights, Northwest, right? And then you have a property in Congress Heights, which is Southeast DC. You can have both properties with the same bedroom size. Let's just say a 3-bedroom, okay? Same amenities, right? But just depending on that location, that would dictate or determine the price point for that rent. So in upscale, lower crime communities, the rent might be a little bit higher. And so a landlord can obviously ask for a little bit more because of the location versus a place on the far south side of the city, right? It's all about location. All right. So in any event, the voucher is not going to have a dollar amount. Okay. The voucher does not tell you the exact amount you're going to get. So when you have an applicant, you have a prospective tenant who comes to you, they may want to rent your rental property. At best, get a copy of the voucher. What you can do is verify that the person is the head of household. So you should also get their photo ID to make sure that the name on the voucher matches the ID. And I see your comments coming, and I'm going to come back to you. You want to make sure that the voucher is active and it has not expired. So for instance, if you have someone who comes to you, they present a voucher that, let's say the voucher expired a year ago. I would not recommend moving forward with that in that process until they bring you a current voucher. Okay. Make sure that it is not expired, because if it's expired, then you don't know that they're actually going to get assistance to rent from you. You can definitely ask those questions. All right. So the voucher, again, it's not going to have a dollar amount. The voucher program in and of itself, it may cover the utilities, but you don't know that until you submit the application, you submit the paperwork to the housing authority, right? And the housing authority will let you know based off of the location, based off of the unit size, based off of utilities, amenities, and all these other things they look at. It goes through a rent reasonableness process. The housing agency will then let that owner know the most that the government is going to pay on behalf of that property. They will have to agree on the rent amount, but that doesn't happen until the paperwork is completed. Well, in this situation, none of that had happened. And the leasing agent told the tester that the voucher would have to cover the rent plus all the utilities plus the voucher. They wanted the voucher to cover the full security deposit. Okay, that's a big no-no. So when the leasing agent was informed that vouchers in DC cover the costs, the leasing consultant discouraged the use of the vouchers altogether, saying that the building is not set up for voucher holders. Like, wait, what? Now, so here's the thing. There are different categories of vouchers. You may have federal vouchers, you may have local vouchers, and just depending on which program the prospective tenant is coming through, that will determine or dictate the amount of funding that is available to assist them with moving in the property. But the tester didn't know that. Okay. And the tester assumed that, you know what, the agency is not going to pay anything at all other than the rent. So we're just going to tell them that they have to cover everything to discourage them. Okay. So they found out, well, this is a voucher that does cover all of those things. Now, all of a sudden, oh, the voucher is not set up for, the building is not set up for voucher holders. I don't know what that means, but in any event, they learned a valuable lesson. So here's the goal of the lawsuit. So the Equal Rights Center is seeking to declare injunctive and monetary relief aiming to halt discriminatory practices and to also reinforce the source of income protections for voucher holders. I'm going to share a statement that the executive director made, but here's what I do want people to know. In the District of Columbia, source of income is a protection for voucher holders, okay? Which is why it is so important for you to understand and know what the laws are. So let me share this statement because I do want you to see the statement that the executive director made. Let me pull that up because I want you to see that. Give me 1 second. And then I'm coming to your comments in the chat box. Thank you so much. All right, so here is the statement that the executive director made, okay? The executive director, Kate Scott, made this comment. In a city as racially and economically diverse as Washington, D.C., we believe everyone should have an equal opportunity to secure housing. Though DC's source of income protection has now been in place for decades, okay, landlords continue to discriminate against voucher holders. We hope this lawsuit sends a message to DC housing providers that such discriminatory practices will not be tolerated. So point blank, period. They are looking to set an example, to make an example out of housing providers who are discriminating. And if you are guilty of discriminating in the past, I encourage you now to change your business practices so that I am not doing a Monday Live talking about a lawsuit filed against you. All right. If you are not sure, okay, so let me speak to some of you who are owners and you have companies who manage the property for you. It doesn't matter that they're managing the property for you, because a lawsuit can name you as the owner, can name the company who's managing the property for you. It can name the individual responsible. So the lawsuit is not predicated on just one person. Okay. It is so important as an owner, as a management company, as a housing professional, that you understand what you can and cannot do. And ignorance is no excuse for violating laws. All right, so I wanted to share that statement that was put out by the director. So now let me come to my comments and then I'm going to continue on. Hello, lady. Thank you so much. How does voting impact tenants or landlords? Oh, that's a good question. Listen, now I won't tell you who to vote for tomorrow, but I will say vote, do your research. No. Oh my gosh, this is such a great question, lady. Know each candidate's position on housing and housing programs. Are there any proposed changes? Are there any cuts that's coming down the pipe? What is their position on these type of housing programs? It does impact landlords and tenants. So let's just go far left, whereas you have one candidate who is dead set against these type of housing programs, and they're going to pull money. They're going to pull funding. They're saying, you know what, Congress, we're going to reallocate the funding that was once for HUD to assist these housing participants in these programs. Allow them to get off of their asset and get a job and pay for their own housing, right? So that's far left. And you go far right, the other candidate who supports housing and is in favor of Congress adding more funding to assist more families to obtain and maintain affordable housing in the United States. So I can appreciate that question. Thank you so much, lady. What's going on, Darius? Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, Preacher, you said, do fair housing law apply to single family homes? That is a great question. So with single family homes, so let me just say this. There are some exemptions, right? So in a situation where the property is 4 units or less, it is one of the units is occupied by the owner, then there are some exemptions as it pertains to fair housing laws that landlords can say, okay, well, maybe I don't want children in the property that I own. But again, it has to be like a 4 unit or less. And like I said, the owner has to actually live in the building. And when it comes to single family homes, fair housing laws are still in play. Okay. So I haven't seen that for single family homes specifically that landlords can do things to discriminate. They still have to go through the process, which is why I made the comment a little bit earlier, whether you're a small landlord, you have one single unit, or you have thousands of doors, right? So for a single family home that the owner does not live in, you are still subject to fair housing laws. And so please make sure that you understand and know so there are federal fair housing laws and then there are local fair housing laws, right? So under the federal fair housing laws, there are several protected classes. But in each jurisdiction, such as DC or Prince George's County, right, there are additional, I'm sorry, the state level, there are additional protected classes, right? And so you just have to understand, depending on where that rental property is, what can or cannot be done. But that is a great question. And I know that some tenants are asking those questions. Can landlords do this in a single family home? And they are still to adhere to the laws, whether it's on a local level, state level, or federal level. Now, let me just also say this. I see your comment, Sean. Thank you for tuning in. Outside of DC, because DC is not a state. So in states, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, there are local, there are state, and then there are federal laws. And you have to know and understand what the laws are on each of those levels. So the federal laws will definitely come into play when there is some sort of housing program connected to it. Hey, Lynn, thank you for tuning in. Good evening, Ms. Spann. I appreciate the content. You selflessly share what you're doing. Definitely offers insight to the rental game, rents and owners. The information being disseminated has tremendous value for both ends of the spectrum. The simplistic breakdown and clear, concise vernacular allows all to conceptually understand the message being conveyed. Again, thank you for what you do. Thank you, Sean. Do love and appreciate you. Hey, Lynn, thank you so much for tuning in. All right, so now let me get back to this story because I want you to know and understand what this looked like and how it is unfolding. So what is source of income discrimination? It is when landlords refuse to rent to applicants because the type of income they use to pay rent. Like I said, like vouchers or Social Security, even if they qualify otherwise, right? And so if, let's say, for instance, you have a prospective tenant comes to you, they have good credit, they meet the credit score requirements. Let's say you're looking for a 620, they have a 680. They check off all the boxes, right, on your list. But there's that income thing. You cannot in DC discriminate because of income, unfortunately. Why is it illegal in DC? Well, in Washington, DC, and a lot of jurisdictions are now starting to add protected income, protected sources of income. It's illegal to discriminate against renters based on how they pay. And thanks to the DC Human Rights Act, this law does protect against various forms of discrimination, including type of income, which essentially it's aiming to ensure equal housing opportunities for everyone. And I wanted to make sure that I broke it down before I get into the tips, because I know that some of you are watching, some of you are not landlords, but some of you do know others who are, or maybe you're thinking about renting your property, right? You need to know that laws are in place. And if you're new to the game, welcome, congratulations. For those of you who are getting into the rental property business, it is not for the faint of heart. Listen, being a property manager or a property owner, it is so much more than collecting money at the beginning of the month. You have to manage the relationship. You have to manage the property. You have to understand what the laws are and how the laws are constantly changing. So remember a little bit earlier, I told you I've been in the industry for almost 3 decades, right? So I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen a lot of changes. And even myself being a licensed property manager, a property management educator, I have to keep updating and refreshing and just making sure that I'm up on what's happening and the changes that are taking place. And what applies today may be very different next week, right? So things are always changing, which is why I like to do these lives on Monday. And again, it costs you nothing but your time to show up to get this information. Free 99 is the best source. And you can take it from me, someone who's been in the industry. I just have a passion for what I do. But let me just share some tips for landlords, and I have some tips for tenants. And please keep those comments coming in, because I am definitely going to answer any questions that you have, remarks, or observations. I'm going to share it on the screen. All right, so let me go to my tips for landlords first. Okay, if you're a landlord, here is what I want you to know and understand, especially about this matter, because this was a costly mistake. Some of you all have been doing this for so long, and although you may have your way of managing your rental property, I promise that the laws are in place to make sure that you're running a legit rental property business. Let me just also say this before I share my tips. For those of you who are operating your rental property in jurisdictions where you're required to have a license, please do that. DC, Maryland, a lot of jurisdictions require owners to have a license if you are operating a rental property business. And if you are in a jurisdiction where it's required, let's say, for instance, you are in a jurisdiction and you have a tenant who is maybe delinquent on their rent, right? They haven't paid their rent in 1 month, 2 months. Now you're coming up on 3 months. The tenant hasn't paid the rent. They have not paid their late fees. And let's say you decide you're fed up. You've had a conversation with the tenant because you've tuned in. You heard me say, oh, well, you can catch more bees with honey than you can with vinegar. And you really legit try to do the right thing by helping them out, by not taking them to court right away. Well, now you do have to take them to court because 3 months of no income coming in, bills have to be paid. Maybe there's a mortgage on the property. Maybe you have insurance and taxes. You have other expenses. Maybe you have been on top of your game and making sure repairs and maintenance was completed. And at the end of the day, we know that all those things take money, right? So let's just say you finally decide to take the tenant to court. And because you don't have that license in place, you get to court level only for the judge to say, well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, we're so glad to see you, have you here today in the court. Unfortunately, because you don't have your license that you're supposed to have to legally run and operate your business, we're just going to dismiss this case. We're just going to kick it out of court. I promise that's not a position you want to be in. So go ahead, start looking at what you need to do for your rental property business. Make those changes. Educate your staff. Educate people who are managing the property for you. Now, let me just say this. Although there are a lot of people managing properties, let me be the first to tell you that everybody is not educated, okay? Which is why I enjoy teaching. I'm a teacher. I'm a property management educator by profession. I enjoy helping people understand what they can and cannot do. All right, so I just wanted to put that in a way. So educate yourself on the local laws. Know what any housing code standards are. If you have participants in voucher programs or any of the housing subsidized program, know what the local laws are. All right, that's free information. You may have to do a little research, but find out what those local laws are. I promise you that it's going to save you a lot of money. All it takes is your time. All it takes is your time, right? So make sure that you understand and make sure that you comply with fair housing laws in your area, especially around voucher acceptance. Because like I said, ignorance of the law is not a valid excuse, and it can lead to some costly legal consequences, like in the range of millions of dollars. The last segment that I did, which was about 2 weeks ago, it broke my heart to share that story. millions of dollars just for a landlord not making repairs. Now, this story that I'm talking about today is about discrimination, but you can see how just not knowing the law, how much it can cost you. Those are costly mistakes. I don't want you in that situation. So please make sure that you adhere to the law. Share this with somebody else. Here's my second tip for landlords on today. You always want to make sure that you are setting clear and consistent application criteria. Make sure that it is in writing. Make sure that it does not violate the law. And please, by all means, if you are the person responsible for creating or setting the criteria for your company, make sure that you use fair, make sure that you use consistent criteria for all applicants, not some, regardless of the income source, because this builds trust and it reduces accusations of discrimination. Now, I will say this, when I'm conducting a tour, right, if I have an applicant, let me just back up. One community that I was managing, so when I came in as a property manager, they had a high turnover with tenants. They had a high turnover rate. They had a lot of vacant units. And so they brought me in. I implemented this campaign to get the units leased. And that's just what I do, right? But they had to spend money to get it done, but they got it done, right? So their vacancy rate, it decreased. Their occupancy rate significantly increased. But with that, I had to make sure that the criteria was the same for everyone, which means that you have to document applicants. If you have appointments coming in, put it on your calendar, write it down somewhere. If you don't have software, I know some of you don't have software, and that's fine, right? That's your preference. But make sure that you have some sort of system where you are documenting. Have a calendar. If it's an online calendar, if it's a property management software, heck, you can have a physical calendar. I don't think I have one in here. Do I have a physical calendar? Use a notebook or something, right? Just document everything, because you want to have a record, right? And that's important because you can have someone come back, let's say a year later, and allege that you discriminated. Well, if you're keeping a record on your calendar that, okay, well, no, on this day, we didn't have someone to tour our property by that name, because here's a list of records for that day to show that you didn't have anybody by that name. Or maybe you did. You want to document the date, the name, the time, the unit size, whether it's a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. If you have multiple units, document which apartment you showed them. What apartment did they tour? Now, a lot of property management softwares will have this. And although softwares are available, software programs are available, you may be surprised to know, and I'm speaking to my owners now, for those of you my friends, right? We're friends. We're just having these type of conversations, friend to friend, right? I know that you own a property, and I know that you're super busy. You have hundreds and thousands of doors, right? And you have staff managing your property. Some of your staff are not using the software that they're supposed to. So maybe now is the time to start meeting with your staff, let them know, hey, document everything, because I saw Karissa online. She said, document. So please make sure that you're setting clear and consistent application criteria. All right, so now let me go to my third tip for landlords on today. Communicate openly with prospective tenants. All right. Make sure that they understand what the process is. Make sure that you are communicating with them. Listen, if you're unsure about the voucher process, don't guess, right? Make sure that you reach out to local housing authorities to clarify how the voucher works. What is it covering? If it's covering the rent, if it's covering the deposit, right? Have that clear and that open conversation with prospective tenants. And so one of the things that I always say is this, and I see your comments coming in. Thank you. So if you have a voucher participant, a housing participant, right, that's coming to you, find out, number one, what program are they in? You also want to make sure that you get that case manager or the housing specialist name, the contact number, and email address in case you have questions, right? So yes, they may say, okay, well, I'm in a voucher program and give you the voucher. That's all well, fine, and good. However, you always want to have a point of contact at the housing agency so that you can follow up with someone in case you have questions that perhaps the tenant does not know how to answer. So let me go to my fourth tip for landlords on today. Consider the broader benefits of voucher tenants. I know that a lot of people have heard such negative things about the Housing Choice Vouchers Section 8 program. But let me just tell you, having worked at various housing agencies, I can tell you that some good people, some good tenants come out of and come from these housing programs, because at the end of the day, sometimes good people just need help. Maybe they, are going to school. Listen, I have had people when I worked for the voucher program, like when I actually worked in the office, I had participants who were in school. This one young lady, she was in law school. She was a single mother. Turned out she was a preacher, right? So everybody that's participating in these programs are not bad. They're not just, up to no good and don't want to do the right thing. Like sometimes people just need a help, or maybe sometimes people do have a strategy to get on their feet or to get back on their feet. And here's what some owners and some people don't know, just in general. With the voucher program, did you know, for those of you who are looking to sell your rental property, did you know that participants in the voucher program can actually use their voucher to purchase a home? A lot of people don't know that. So there are some good things that can come out of the voucher program. And so I want you to consider the broader benefits of voucher tenants. They're not all bad. You do have to screen. I would recommend that you screen voucher tenants the way that you would screen a market tenant. They're no different, right? It's not that one category of tenants is better than the other. Listen, I've managed a wide range of rental property, single family homes, high-end luxury rental properties, low-income affordable communities, tax credit communities. Like I have certifications through the roof and back, right? And so from one community to the next, it's rental housing. You're going to have the same issues. Pipes are going to break. Faucets are going to leak. Toilets might get stopped up, right? You may have tenant damage. So it doesn't matter if the property is in southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest, up north, down south, east, or west. It is all the same. All right. So consider the broader benefits of renting to voucher participants, because Housing Choice Voucher participants are often long-term renters, okay, with stable rental assistance, versus, let's say you have a market tenant and they lose their job. They can't pay their rent. So now you might be in a situation where you're not getting any income at all, right? So that's just one of the benefits, because they are long-term tenants. Just treat them right and they'll stay there a long time, but make sure that you are on top of your rental property business. You're conducting inspections and you understand the condition of the rental property, right? Just make sure that you understand the benefits of renting to someone in one of these type of programs. So here is my that's my fourth tip. Here's my fifth tip for landlords on today. Stay updated on fair housing news. So I'm coming to your comment, Lynn. So the story that I shared today is all about fair housing, right? A landlord of, multiple owners discriminated. They had discriminatory practices that were happening on their property. Now, let me just say this, because it's not that the owners discriminated. It's the people who work for the owners that were found guilty of discriminating, which is why I shared a little earlier. Make sure that your staff, whoever's managing the property for you, understand and know what the laws are. All right. So when this happens, when you stay updated on fair housing laws, you want to make sure that you keep an eye out on developments in housing laws, especially please make sure that you follow ERC, the Equal Rights Center. Google them, look them up weekly, see if there are any changes, look them up monthly. Don't go more than 30 days without seeing if there's some sort of update by the ERC, especially if you have property in the DC metropolitan area, because things are not just happening in DC, but there are things happening in Maryland, there are things happening in Virginia, whereas the ERC may be involved with. Okay, so that's why I want you to keep an eye out for them, like this lawsuit in particular. And this helps to make sure that you ensure that your practices are compliant and that you are adapting to any changes in regulations, whether it's local or federal. All right, so I have tips for tenants. I'm going to share my tenants. Lynn, you said make sure you give your tenants a copy of all correspondence that they sign, and you have a copy in your files that are updated. That is so good. Please make sure that you make a note of Lynn's comment. That is so on point. Thank you for that, Lynn. All right, so now let me share my tips for tenants, because as a tenant, please know and understand that you do have rights, which clearly these owners found out. All right, first and foremost, tenants, I say this every week, tenants know and understand what your rights are. Familiarize yourself as well with local laws regarding voucher acceptance, and don't hesitate to seek help if you feel discriminated against. Resources like the ERC can definitely be extremely valuable. But here's what I would not recommend. Here's one of the things that I see a lot on Facebook and social media. Sometimes people will get on social media and they want to give this rant about how bad their landlord is. And by all means, if that's your outlet, that's fine, but don't stop there. Now, I will say that sometimes people have opinions. You know, opinions are like buttholes. Everybody have one, right? So don't always just be so eager to get feedback from people who don't know the law. Now, I get it. If you have a situation going on with your landlord, you want to make sure that you get it resolved. But if you're talking to people who don't know the law, they may advise you on things that they have no clue about. And I promise you that common sense is not the law. All right. But if you have a situation going on as a tenant, know that you do have rights. You can reach out to the ERC. You can reach out to HUD and get assistance. Here is my second tip for tenants on today. If you are a voucher participant, if you are participating in any type of housing program, when you are out looking for rental property, please present your voucher information clearly. And if you have questions about what your voucher will cover, please reach out to your housing specialist, reach out to the briefing coordinator, or whoever issued you the voucher, right? Because it's different titles now. I can't keep up, right, with the different agencies. But make sure that as a housing participant, that you understand and can clearly articulate what is going on with your voucher. When does it expire? Do not promise a landlord that the voucher is going to cover $1 million if all your voucher is going to cover is $1,000, right? Don't stretch the truth, because that just won't work out well for you, because at the end of the day, you can present all this information and only for the owner to find out or realize that none of it is true. So please make sure, voucher participants, that you are clearly conveying what the voucher is, how it works. Make sure that you understand it. You can always ask your housing specialist, the case manager. And if you're not getting results on that level, you can always escalate that up to a supervisor. Okay. Just go up the chain if you're not getting those questions answered. All right. I see your comments coming in. I'm coming back to you. So when you are doing that as a tenant, you want to make sure that not only are you presenting clear information, but you want to make sure that you are preventing misunderstandings from happening. You want to make sure that you prevent excuses from landlords about not accepting the vouchers, because sometimes you can give the wrong information as a tenant, right? Talking to my tenants now, you can give the wrong information to someone who would have rented to you, but but because you presented information that was inaccurate, maybe this landlord is not willing to take a chance on you. Now, it's not to say that they are not going to accept voucher holders or voucher participants. Maybe they're going to rent to somebody else because the next person clearly presented the voucher and answered questions in a way that helped this owner understand how the program works. Because here's the thing. There are a lot of landlords who are not as knowledgeable about the voucher program, and maybe they will rent to you if they are made aware, if they understand the inner workings of the program. So that's why, as a tenant, as a participant in any type of housing program, you understand it so that you can convey it to the landlord. Okay, so now let me go to my comment section, and then I'm coming back with more tips for tenants. Hello, Lynette. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, I see your comment, Lynette. I'm gonna come back to you. Let me share. I have another tip I want to share for tenants. Okay, so I said know your rights. I said present your voucher clearly. And here's a third tip for tenants. Document everything in the same way I tell owners to document. As a tenant, I'm telling you to document. You know why? Because when you keep a detailed record of all communication with prospective landlords, especially if they imply restrictions based on your voucher status, you want to make sure that you're documenting that, because it's going to be essential, especially if you think that you have a case and you want to file a complaint. So document everything. Document when you call, right? So one of the things that I do is I show, when I'm teaching property management, I show my students how to conduct a market survey. I show them how to shop a competitor. I show them how to pretend that they're a tenant when in fact they're not. Essentially, I'm showing them how to be a tester, right? And so I want you to know and understand that you have to document everything. Document when you call, right? Who did you speak to? Were they cordial? Were they professional? Did they greet you by name? Did they seem interested when you told them that you're a participant in the housing program? Did they conveniently not have something available now that you share that you're in the voucher program? Did you schedule the appointment? And when you got there, now all of a sudden, I know we scheduled the appointment, but now that you're here, we don't have anything available, when in fact they may, right? Document all those things, because at the end of the day, it is not what you know, it's what you can prove, which is why you want to always document. All right, so let me go to my fourth, and I see your comments coming in. Please keep them coming in. I have 2 more tips for tenants, and then I'm coming to your comments. Now, here is what a lot of tenants are now starting to do: seek housing support services. That's going to be important. So if you feel like you've been discriminated against, if you feel like you have a case, like I said, yeah, you can get on social media and you can talk about it. You could talk about how bad the landlord is and how the property is, if it's a raggedy property, if it was clean, if the landlord or the property manager showed you a property that needed repairs and it had holes in the wall, or maybe you looked under the cabinet and it had spider webs and dead bugs and it had mice traps. Like, you can talk about all those things, and unfortunately that does happen. I'm not surprised. It shouldn't, especially for those of you who've been watching me and following me, right? You already know, don't show rental property in that condition, but people do it, and that's their prerogative. This is a no judgment zone. I just want to make sure that I'm sharing this information, because sharing is caring. But seek housing support services. There are a lot of nonprofits. There are a lot of local organizations that offers legal advice, that support tenants in voucher programs that are facing discrimination, right? And so don't feel like you're by yourself, because when you begin to seek assistance and you seek advice, they can provide guidance on the right way to handle these type of situations. All right, so here's my last and final tip for tenants on today. And thank you so much for sharing, guys. Thank you for sharing this broadcast or the replay. Engage with the community. And you notice this is the 5th one, right? Because this is the last thing to do. You feel like you've been your rights have been violated, yeah, you can share it on social media. You can do all those things, but do all of the others first. Do 1 through 4 before you get on social media blasting your landlord, or the prospective landlord. Engage with the community, but not just on social media. Join tenant right groups. Join local housing meetings. Get involved. Stay informed about your rights, right? And connect with others who may share your experience or have resources to share. And sometimes you don't know how things are going to unfold if you never say a word, right? And I'm not saying don't share your story on social media. I'm just saying that do more than that. But if you do share as a tenant, you share your concerns in these housing groups. And there are a lot of housing groups on Facebook, by the way, for those of you who don't know, right? Find a local chapter, a Facebook group in your area, because you never know resources that are available. And a lot of people want to help others in the community. And I can really appreciate that, but make sure that you're getting sound advice. And when you don't know, reach out to a nonprofit, reach out to a local organization. You can always reach out to HUD. If you're in a DC metropolitan area, you can reach out to the ERC. All right. So now let me go to my questions that are in the chat box. And thank you so much for your time and your patience. I know that I shared a lot today, and there was a lot to share because I said it and I'm going to say it over and over and over. And unfortunately, it's going to come to pass. All right. It's just manifestation. I've said we're going to see a lot of lawsuits being filed against owners, and it's happening, and we're going to see more. All right. So now let me go to my comments. You said you have news. The people upstairs were evicted and it is quiet. Oh, that's good. We actually hear the squirrels running on the grass. I know I'm wrong for saying that, but they voted on it. Listen, I know the issues that you had with your neighbors, and I'm happy that you don't have that issue. It's unfortunate if they were evicted. It's unfortunate that that happened, but I am happy to hear that you in a better situation where you don't have to complain about your neighbors. Tippy, I documented everything, and Graystar's lawyer sent me a letter telling me if I complain, I will get evicted. Whoa. So Tippy, I thank you for this comment. I would strongly recommend that you find yourself a landlord attorney or an advocate that can help you, because if you have a lawyer that is retaliating, and typically attorneys don't do that, but if you have a lawyer that's retaliating, or if you have a property manager that's retaliating, that may be against the law. Okay. I don't have a lot of information about your situation, Tippy. I'm not going to ask that you share it publicly. I will give you my email address. But I'm not sure that that's a legal situation there. But again, I don't have enough information to guide you on that. And again, I am not an attorney, and I don't want to guess. I'm gonna give you my email address. I want you to email me, and I'll see if I can get you some resources in your area. But thank you for sharing, and thank you for tuning in. Okay. Should you also make sure you take pictures of the home before moving in to make sure when you left it looks the same? Or should the landlord do this? This is a great question. I definitely appreciate this question. You should always take pictures before and after. So before you move in as a tenant, you should take pictures. Before you move in as a tenant, you should be conducting inspections while the landlord is present. You should do that together. I would always recommend as a tenant. So if I'm moving into a property, I want to do the inspection with the landlord present, because I may see something that the landlord may not see. So let's just say I'm moving into your rental property, right? You allow me to move in, right? And you say, well, Karissa, just send me a list of what you see and we'll make sure it's taken care of. So I may see something or note something that don't exist, or maybe I share something, maybe I do see something and the landlord disputes it. Maybe the landlord say, oh, well, that wasn't there. When we gave you the keys, that was not in the place. There was no scratch on the wall when we gave you the keys, right? So it's always good to do it together. And I do appreciate your comment, Lynn. Coming to you, you said videos are good also. I recommend videos. I always recommend videos. In addition to pictures, I recommend videos. Okay. Tippy, you said you had to find a fair housing complaint and they got served for discrimination. Absolutely. I didn't see that comment, Tippy, before I made the statement above about that might be against the law and all that good stuff. Good. I'm glad that you did. Okay, the net. All the other apartment complexes in Charlotte on our vouchers, this new company that is out of Washington State, they don't accept voucher. I can't tell you how many people have moved or have not paid rent since December when they switched over. And some of these tenants have been living here for a few years. It was sad, but for the ones upstairs, they had to go. And it was filthy upstairs, feces. Wow, that's really, really bad. But here's the thing. And I know that over the years, a lot of housing providers have opted not to rent to participants in the voucher program. Well, the laws are changing. And so maybe they were able to get away with it before because it was allowable, right? And it just depends on the jurisdiction. I know that the laws are changing. Federal fair housing laws are starting to change the game for a lot of people. And it is unfortunate. I see your comment, Tippy. I know what you meant. Thank you. And I know that it's going to be really hard for some housing providers to be forced to accept participants in voucher programs and the housing programs, because the program has gotten such a bad rap in a lot of places, in a lot of areas. But again, like I said, there are some good stories that come out of individuals with vouchers. At the end of the day, I strongly recommend that if a property manager, owner, or property management company or professional, whoever it is, if you are not knowledgeable about the laws, to definitely understand the laws. If you're not as knowledgeable about the program, do some research about the program. Consider, like I shared a little earlier, the broader perspective of having voucher participants rent your property. They are long-term tenants. Now, it will require, for some of you, it will require some research. It will require some education. It will require some policy changes, because maybe you've never had a housing participant before, okay? And maybe you don't have a policy in place to govern a better way of running your rental property business. So they're just like any other tenant, right? A market tenant, a working professional tenant. Doesn't matter their race, doesn't matter their color, you know. You can have the average Joe Schmo who's a participant in the voucher program. And let me just say that housing participants are not only for single mothers. You have some elderly, you have veterans, you have single men, you have a wide range of individuals who legit need assistance with housing, because let's just face it, housing is expensive for a lot of people and they just can't afford it. And so the government has made it possible for individuals to go through these housing programs so that they can have an affordable place to live and to call home. So I shared a lot today, and I know that this was new for some of you. Let me give you my email address. I want you to find me also on YouTube. That's my email address at the bottom of the screen there. Please email me, okay? info@landlordlyfe.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. On YouTube, I'm at Landlord Lyfe with Karissa Spann. Again, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you'll be the first to know when I'm live, when I'm online, when I have updates, when I have insights. And this is what I do weekly. I'm live on Facebook, I'm live on LinkedIn, and I'm live on YouTube. I appreciate you. I'm here every Monday. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. Was this helpful? Did anybody find any value out of this? Let me know your feedback. Listen, if you have comments, if you have topics that you would like for me to discuss when I'm not live, and on air, feel free to reach out to me by way of email. I will respond. All right. Thank you so much, Lynette. Listen, guys, my time is up. I absolutely thank you for yours. Please make sure that you tune in each and every Monday right here on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. And thank you for sharing, Lynette. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you all. And I know that I went a little longer today. I don't typically stay on this long, but I had a lot of information to share. This is a true story situation that happened in Washington, D.C., but this is not isolated just to Washington, D.C. I recognize that I have viewers who tune in from all throughout the United States. So I do appreciate you. I'm Karissa Spann, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant expert. Until next time, be blessed, be amazing, but keep showing up every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here. Bye for now.